Okay, well, I'd like to take a reading from Isaiah chapter 40 and verses 6 to the end. And I'll share it on the screen. I'm going to be reading from the English Standard Version. The word of the Lord of God stands forever. A voice says, "Cry," and I said, "What shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fade when the breath of the Lord blows on it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flowers fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. Go up to a high mountain, O Zion, herald of good news. Lift up your voice and strength with strength. O Jerusalem, herald of good news, lift it up, fear not. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God comes with might, and his arm rules for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. He will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those that are young. Who has measured the water in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens with a span, enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who has measured the Spirit of the Lord? Or what man shows him his counsel? Whom did he consult? And who made him understand? Who taught him the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are accounted as the dust on the scales. Behold, he takes up the coastlands like fine dust. Lebanon would not suffice for fuel, nor its beasts enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing, and emptiness. To whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness compare him? An idol? A craftsman casts it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold, and casts for it silver chains. He who is too impoverished for an offering chooses wood that will not rot. He seeks out a skillful craftsman to set up an idol that will not move. Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in, who brings the princes to nothing and makes the rulers of the earth as emptiness. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows on them and they wither, and the test carries them off like stubble. To whom will you compare me, that I should be like him, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see, who created these? He who brings out their host by number, calling them all by name, by the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. I I chose this passage because it reminded me of some of the lessons that we learned in lockdown. We had quite a severe lockdown in Ecuador, and here in this passage we see how first it talks about the state of humanity. It talks about our lives being like grass, by being like flowers that fade and fall. Talks about the power of the rulers in the earth, on the earth, who are ruling for a while and then disappear. And so I believe here that perhaps we think it's a strange way to comfort us, but Isaiah here is showing us the brevity of life. He's showing us the insignificance of our existence, and comparing it with the greatness of our God. And so we see most of the passages is talking about how great is our God, that he is nothing for him to measure the seas of the earth in the hollow of his hand, or to measure the heavens, because he can do all those things. No one can measure the spirit of our God. And so he's showing how insignificant the earth really is, and our problems, and how great our God is. And so every time that we feel down, we feel that things are getting on top of us, we need to turn our eyes. It says, look up, turn our eyes to God, turn our eyes to this great God who every problem is insignificant in his sight. And so we serve a great God. He doesn't grow faint and he doesn't grow weary. He is from everlasting and to everlasting. And we see here that the way he's describing God is really echoes the way that God was talking to Job in the book of Job, answering at the end of the book of Job, how could men be questioning God? And so that is something for us to remember, that God's wisdom and God's knowledge is infinite compared to ourselves. And and we see here in verse 27, it says, really the context here was that Judah was going to be overrun by the Babylonians, and the people were saying, well, it says, my way is hidden from the Lord, my right is disregarded by my God. And so this was the complaint that the people felt forgotten by God. And so Isaiah is reminding them, have you not known, verse 28, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. And so even though we go through times of suffering, difficult times, times when we don't really understand what's going on, God is saying that he knows what's happening. He has his plan and he has his purposes. He's not going, it's not because he's weak or faint, because he has power. And he says in verse 29, he gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases his strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. And so many times we have felt tired, we've felt exhausted, but God renews our strength. And we know that the battle is the Lord's. It's not ours. It's his kingdom that God is building. and we are just a small part of it. And so that's, I hope, in some way, an encouragement that God wants to comfort us, but not by making our problems seem so huge, but by reminding us that we serve a great God, and that no problem is too much for him. And so we'd like to thank you as a church for supporting us over these last years, many years, and especially for your prayers for us, which are invaluable to release God's power into the situations in which we've been serving him. Isaiah has been a very dear book to us, and we'll just start sharing the video now. Sorry, it's not a video, it's a PowerPoint.
We want to, as Mark says, to thank you not only for your generosity and supporting us all these years. And I know you've been supporting Mark before I wasn't on board. But it's been a blessing to see the Lord at work. And not only your generosity, but also your prayers. Your prayers have been a vital part of the work. Without your prayers, we wouldn't achieve or do anything that we did because you pray. So what we are going to share at the moment is basically God's work, obviously, but also is your work because you've been at work from the place you are. And by giving, by praying, and by being faithful all these years. And our oldest son is going to be 20 years old. And I remember the first time that I went to the church, I remember the little wee guy was in the basket on the prom, I think. And it's been, I just can't stop praising the Lord for all of you who's been standing in this work. And brothers and sisters, I just want to say, the souls that's been saved is the Lord doing the work because you remain faithful. And so what you're going to see just is your work, basically, partnering with the Lord and us there because you did the work. And we were the ones who we were sent by you and sustained by you and your prayers and your faithfulness. And so this is your work as much as it's God's work, and we've been there. So it's not that you have been behind us, it's you've been hand by hand with us.
So we're going to take a short trip to Ecuador. Very famous for the bananas. You maybe haven't seen red bananas before. They're not that common, but
the monkey eats them.
Ecuador's there on the western side of South America, just under Colombia. You'll remember that, and the Galapagos Islands are in the Pacific. Ecuador, the continental part of Ecuador, as they say, is in three different regions: the coastal plains close to sea level, then the Andes Mountains rising up to about 20,000 feet with many valleys and plateaus, and then the Amazon jungle, which is getting down close to sea level again. We are in Loja, which is in the very south of the country, in Loja City, capital of Loja province. Back in 2008, we were leaving Well, we were trying to leave after home assignment for Ecuador and got delayed, but God promised to make a way for us through, we received that through Isaiah. And then in 2011, we were reading Isaiah again, and God promised to do a new thing right there from Isaiah. And so there's that was our family back in 2011. So another word from the Lord came through Isaiah from chapter 41 and verses 17 and 18. The poor and needy search for water, but there is none. Their tongues are parched with thirst. And we could feel the physical need of the people, but more the spiritual needs, that there was no evangelical churches in this area. But I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. And so we believe that God would provide a witness for them in our area. And I will make rivers flow on barren heights. And these were the words that really jumped out at us. The barren heights above the city of Loja, where there are no evangelical churches, and the parched ground into springs. And so we began in August of 2011, a couple of weeks after we started having a holiday Bible club. And so this is most of the church were children. There was about 4 single mothers, and these are the small beginnings there in our living room in Ecuador. We were able to celebrate the Lord's Supper. We're a functioning church right there in the home. And this was the Christmas program, the first one in 2011, using the different festivals like Christmas and Easter to reach people around. And so this was an example of one family who were reached because their girl, Karen, came to the one of the first holiday Bible club and then continued to attend, and her grandparents and parents came, and then they were among the first people baptized in the church. And so it's great to see how God's word is sowing around in more than 10 communities around the city of Loja. We did lots of holiday Bible clubs, sometimes having up to 5 Bible clubs simultaneously around the city. The church was growing in the living room. We'd have to rearrange the furniture to get people in, and realized that we needed more space, and so began to build onto the back of our house. God provided funds for us to continue building, and by November, the building was, this part was finished, and this is a team that we took to Aswai, to the area that Nube's from, to share the gospel to the children. The doors opened marvelously for us to talk to all of the children in the school and share the gospel with them and give them all a present from Samaritan's Purse. And this is the first meeting we had in the new room that was built. It was just about full when we started. And so we had to use this tent as an overflow. And then God provided, a team came and they were able to help us with funds to put on a roof on the next part next to this meeting room. And so these are the beginnings of the Biblical Christian Community Church there in Santa Cruz outside Loja City. And we've had help from different teams and missionaries. This is Teresa Rains, who helped with a program called Pure Life to teach the Bible and good nutrition to the ladies in the church and others. And so this was the enlarged meeting room that we have been meeting in. It was further enlarged. We were able to knock out some walls and have an area for the platform. In 2018, then we returned. This is this last term. There was a new thing that had been introduced, was having fellowship times after the church service. And so it was a good time for people to get together. And this was celebrating the 7th anniversary of the church in 2018. And this is the congregation then. And similar to how it was before lockdown, this is friend from Northern Ireland who came to teach on small groups and leading with elders in the church. This was the Sunday school. It had shrunk a bit and was they were only having one class for all the children, all ages. And so that we began to teach more, Nube began to teach more teachers. The church was also having times with sport on Sunday evenings and getting together for a time of fellowship. And then we also had a couples course called Love and Respect, run by the other missionaries in the church. And we had an evangelism team come in 2018, teaching us to use the Evangi Cube. And we took teams out mixed with the team members and people from the church who also learned about using different techniques to share their faith. And here's the group that learned about using the Evangi Cube and these Evangi cards. Each year we try to have a Christmas program, and it sometimes has a huge attraction of up to 200 people and children. This was a couple that were working with us, Edwin and Xiomara, that during our last furlough, and then they left in January of 2019 to study in the US. Perhaps some of you remember Fidel and Sandy. They got married and I was able to marry them. And then a short while later, they unfortunately decided to leave us and go to another congregation, but we are glad to hear that they're serving there. And Alex and Adriana came for their first visit in March of 2019. They're a couple from Peru. Both are trained in seminaries and Bible colleges and have been a great help in the church. And they're continuing while we are on furlough at the moment. And so this is Palm Sunday. We often have programs on Palm Sunday and encourage the participation of the kids for that. And this was a couples banquet we had to culmination of a course on marriage, and that was a good thing. Nube went on this youth mission to the jungle area, the Amazon area. You want to say something about that?
No, just has been a blessing to see the youth and the new generation in the church being a blessing for the other communities around, but also we went to the jungle. And this is one of the kids' programs, and they love to come. This is the church and all the teaching that is being around, and Mark sharing the gospel and also getting the people ready for baptism. All of that, it was before the pandemic situation. And so the pandemic, oh yes, this, we had the blessing to have a team from UK, from England, to teach sports, to reach through the sports. So it was a blessing. We had so many children, so many adults coming, but they came back like 4 days before the lockdown.
Well, returned to England, yes.
Yeah, so it was a blessing, but we really enjoyed it. It was the last. We were open only 1 week more, and then we were closed. Lockdown. This is the sports.
And this was teaching the gospel. In the first part of the program, they would learn the gospel, have drama, and so these were the values that were added. It was called Football with Values. And another thing we wanted to do was train trainers, grow them. There's Alex. He's a short guy. And we had a camp where the team from England taught a lot about sports ministry and using sports and teaching the Bible through sports and different activities. And the church was really getting behind this idea of using sports, teaching children sports, and reaching them with the gospel. some of the men in the church thought this was quite a novel idea because they'd had to give up their sports because most of the sports is done with drinking and gambling. And so this is a way of using sports for the gospel. And this is one of the men's meetings we had in 2020. And then we had to move on online.
Oh, sorry.
And so in March, we got this severe lockdown and began trying to work out how to get the meetings online, and bit by bit, we were able to use the equipment we had. As the church building was right next to us, then we were able to make up use the different pieces of equipment until we eventually had lots of equipment there in our living room. So the church had moved back into our living room because of the sound quality. And the amazing thing was that we had all of the necessary wires and connectors, the camera and the computer, everything there to be able to go online because all the shops were shut except for pharmacies and supermarkets. And so God really provided even ahead of time, things like a thermometer to measure the temperature and oximeter, things that we really needed. Actually, when we came to we actually got infected with COVID ourselves. And so those things were really necessary. So we didn't have to go to hospital. Nube can tell you about teaching the children at home. School moved home too.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to be a teacher, to help the children and to be busy. It was kind of a challenge because we needed to do all the packing, the food packaging, and the prayer time and everything. And on top of that, to teach, it was, for us, the lockdown went so quick, so fast, and it was no time for even thinking what was going on. To work and work and work.
That's weird.
These are the little ones that, you know, the Lord bless us with Timothy.
He's now studying in university. He's studying animation in Ulster University. Alison is our foster daughter, and she's studying online at the Rio Grande Bible College in Texas. And then she's, you can pray for her, she's applying for her visa to go and actually study in person. And Deborah's here with us studying her AS levels and applying for university this year for next September. And then Sammy is in primary 7. Here in Northern Ireland, there's only primary school and secondary school. And so he's doing exams this year, replacing him as well for high school. Although we're planning to go back to Ecuador next summer, God willing. And so during the lockdown, we began to do Adriana, the lady from Peru. She began doing the Sunday school stories on YouTube, and many of them are still there. And then also the Friday Bible Club was done on Zoom and continues to be done on Zoom. And so they have different time slots for the different age groups. So we could use the same Zoom. And really the children, although they're a bit zoomed out with their school learning, but they liked the Bible classes on computer. Maybe we can tell you about the women's.
We got because we wanted to be effective in what the Lord was doing, so we divided the ladies in 2 groups. And so we made the girls, the young girls, who are called the well-informed ladies. It was more like a gossiping time, but yeah. And the other ones was the over 40, and we called A bad name, I think it is, but it's the ones who get pleasure in the Lord. So it
In the
is
Holy Bible Club.
the Holiday Bible Club. We didn't know how to do. We were just recuperating as ourselves from COVID. By the way, I should stop a little and say thank you for crucial prayers in our COVID journey. It was very, very scary, very hard and frightened. And the miracle was that at the time we didn't have masks, we didn't have gloves to go away outside or anything, but the Lord provided in a bag that we had for years and years and years ago.
A couple of years.
And so the Lord provide masks. We find 200 masks, 100 pair of gloves, and a temperature
Okay.
thermometer, and we had an oximeter, and we have a stethoscope.
Stethoscope.
And stethoscope, everything to keep ourselves okay during the pandemic, the lockdown. So it was a blessing to see the hand of the Lord. We never thought we were going to, I even forgot about it, but the Lord didn't forget it. And the Lord knew what he was doing. And years after, we use it.
Oh, and also a doctor from the US was in constant contact with us and making sure that we were okay every day, and having us check all the vital vital levels of each of us. And so that was a great blessing. And he also he got medicine sent to us from another part of Ecuador, which arrived in time.
So thank you. Thanks the power of the Lord and the prayers. This is the what is this? This Holiday Bible Club. And this is, we packaging the food, the help for the people, because 2 weeks after the food, it was finished around, because the people are very poor in those areas and working basically in construction, the men and women helping in house or doing housework.
We were actually, well, we began giving out some of our own food, and then the church, we bought some with church money and were able to give out some packs of food. And then funds started coming in from all over, from the UK, from the US, Northern Ireland. And we were able to give out packages of food that were for about a family of 4 to survive for 2 weeks. During the worst time of the lockdown, we were able to give out, it was 13 tons approximately of food. So we give thanks to God for his bountiful supply. We never imagined that he would do that. And during the time, Alex was presenting the gospel to the people as they waited for their packs of food. And so all of the people who came, there was how many, over about 200 families during that time, and they all heard the gospel and also got gospel tracts with their food. So it was spiritual and physical food. And then each new year, we received the new year with prayer. And so this last new year, we weren't sure how to do it because of the lockdowns, of course. We had nighttime curfews. They have curfews in Ecuador by the number plate on your car. Some days, some numbers could go out. Other days, others had to go out. And so that was a way of controlling how many people were out of their homes. And so we decided to do it on Zoom, of course. And so it's kind of interesting tonight, we're on Zoom watching Zoom being used for ministry. And then the government was given permission for churches to open up. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but the hygiene engineer, he said, yes, we can get permission for you to open up because you're a missionary. We're not a registered church. And so he said, because you're a missionary, you're covered under the law, the freedom of religion law. And so he got permission and we were able to open up in November. We opened up for one Sunday and then found that we had somebody come in with COVID. So we were quite frightened, decided we better close down again. And we closed for 3 weeks and opened it again in December. And so we were able to have better control of the temperature of people coming in, and they're greeted with alcohol. It's a new type of greeting that we give people coming to church. And of course, the chairs are all spaced out, and children weren't allowed to be in the main meeting. We did later then add on a Sunday school down in the tent in the back garden for the 10 to 12-year-olds. But things are certainly quite different, wearing masks and taking people's temperature and all of these things. And the youngest and the oldest weren't allowed to come to the services. There's still the same restrictions. They haven't been so relaxing them very much. This was a baptism with social distancing and lots of precautions. I'm here explaining baptism, and then one of the people getting baptized giving his testimony. That COVID wasn't the only problems we had. There was a time with very heavy rains and flooding. One of the families in the church had, or several families had, problems with landslides below their houses. And so we went out and helped them to put this plastic over the hillside that had been slipping away, and managed to control the landslide so that it wasn't, the weight of the water was pushing it down the hill. So this way the water got taken off. So thankfully their house survived. The flooding was also pouring down into the rivers and overflowing. Further upriver, it was overflowing into the market. And we noticed this when we went to buy groceries in the supermarket just opposite, and then went back to help with the cleanup in the market. And so a group of the young people, we all went down for about 2 or 3 hours to wash out, to hose down the place, and even help the market people to clean up their pots. And part of the work, we believe we use an integrated type of ministry to try and help people. Sometimes they're in great need help with food, or in other ways, help them start a business, as well as sharing the gospel with them and discipling them once they become believers, and helping them to grow in their Christian life and to serve God. The men's group moved to online and has been had good attendance each month, and using the Zoom as well. So the church just celebrated their 10th anniversary. Well, it should have been in August, but it just celebrated in this month. And so it's really it shows us the fulfillment of the promise God gave us from Isaiah chapter 43 and verses 20 and 21. I provide water in the wilderness, streams in the wasteland. In Spanish, it says El Páramo, which is the high desert, to give drink to my people, my chosen, the people I formed for myself, that they may proclaim my praise. And here's Gabby, the leader of the worship team there in the church, and others. So it's great to see God being praised there in that area, which was a spiritually dry area, now has the gospel shining out in both word and deed. So God's story continues, and we arrived here in Belfast in July. It was really an amazing story itself of how God got us here, all the paperwork into place in the last minute to be able to fly back. And this year, we're hoping to reconnect with as many of our supporters as possible, and to recharge our batteries spiritually and physically. Nube's been having some checkups. We just had a call from the doctor today, telling us about an appointment next month, and also replenishing the stocks, the funds, and things that we need for our next term. So God willing, we hope to return in next summer to Ecuador. And so you can be involved by praying, by caring, in different ways, by in touch, by sending things to encourage and help the family, by going out to visit. We've had several individuals come out in teams to us in Ecuador, and also by giving. And there's many needs for the ministry there in Loja, replacing our vehicle, which will cost about £20,000, leadership training and the integrated development for £5,000, and the Loja Training Center, which we're planning to build. We need to buy a site and we need to raise about £50,000 for that. And so lots of things to pray for. And Nube might want to give some more prayer points before we come to prayer.
Okay.